It's my absolute pleasure today to welcome Susan Luck, who is sharing with us weaving nutrition into an integrative nurse coach practice. Susan Luck is the co-director of the International Nurse Coach Association. She's the director of Earth Rose Institute. She has a wealth of knowledge of functional medicine and nutrition, and she's here today to share with us how we can incorporate that and weave it into our nurse coaching practice. Thank you so much. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you, Susan. Welcome everyone who's joining us today. I have a background in nutrition for many years, and I've watched the field evolve as a certified clinical nutritionist and also working in community health for many years and also teaching nutrition in various programs. And it's wonderful to see how it is becoming more mainstream. The consumers are more educated, and it's really imperative that we as professionals also understand where nutrition has been in the research and also in application in many different practice models. What's really exciting is that in integrative nurse coaching, we are being asked in organizations hiring our nurse coaches, do they have a background in nutrition, because the nutritional coaching piece is so important. So here we are today to start to look at some of this. There are several in a series of nutrition, and we will start with the basics and an overview of how it fits into the integrative nurse coach model and also the changing paradigm in healthcare. So without further, we need to look at the objectives. This is part of our education process, and review the role of nutrition in the integrative nurse coach model to explore the concept of food as energy. Nurse coaching, as we know it, is an energy-based model, which I will go more into. And food nurtures every cell into the mitochondria, the inner workings, the heart of every cell, the heart and soul. And so I would like to try to review some of that in our time together. And also to explore how the strategies of coaching weave with nutrition and lifestyle behaviors for choice and change, and to recognize the prevalence of environmental exposures both in the food chain as well as in our external environment and how that impacts our health and well-being. The research on phytochemicals, the chemical properties in our live foods, is growing every day. And so I'd like to look at that and the complexity of foods that have sustained us through millennia, and what's happened today in this short period of time that's changed our food choices and our food experience. And also, how do we begin to co-create a conscious eating plan with our clients and families and communities? So the core of coaching is looking at the lifestyle influences. It said that perhaps 90% of the chronic disease today could be attributed to, in part, the lifestyle choices that we make in our food, in our thoughts, in our stress in life, our movement and exercise, everything that we have some capacity to control. So here's a statistic on looking at the $900 billion that could be saved over 10 years just looking at lifestyle medicine, or we might say lifestyle nurse coaching, for health promotion, being proactive, partnering with our clients and families, empowering them, and helping to repattern behaviors. This is key. And we always look back to Florence Nightingale, or look ahead to Florence Nightingale as our mentor and teacher, that no amount of medical knowledge will lessen the accountability of nurses to do what nurses do, and that is to manage the environment to promote positive life processes. And in this case, we're talking about our food environment, our external environment, how we grow our food, the chemicals we put on our food, the way the food is nurtured and handled and processed before it's ever brought to your store and to your table, and also how that impacts your health in your interiority, how the food affects your microbiome, the good bacteria, how it supports healthy bacterial growth or might influence other organisms from overgrowing. We might look at how it impacts your neurotransmitters and your communication to the brain. We will be looking at how food speaks to your heart and heart healthy diets and how food speaks to your brain and is part of keeping the brain active and alive as we age. So in the foundations of integrative nurse coaching, we look at history, theories, science. We look at integrating the body, mind, spirit as an important part of the healing process. And we acknowledge that change begins from within before it could ever be manifested externally. Our intention is to promote healthy lifestyle behaviors, to support growth and change, and to provide coaching strategies to reframe, repattern, and rebalance. And we're relation-centered. We work with our communities individually and in groups. We have skills that are purposeful, result-oriented, and structured, and our intention is to achieve the goals of those we're working with. We have a 5-step process, which is connecting to the story, deep listening, deep questioning, inviting opportunities for change, integrating and practicing and embodying change in our own self-care, and guiding and supporting self-development. We look at listening to the story and what are the strengths we can focus on, and what are the risks we can manage, and what are the roadblocks to success for an individual, and where do they begin in their first step, in their action plan. Small step is a big step for many. So this is laying the foundation for our integrative nurse coach process. We also integrate holistic modalities such as meditation, imagery, mindfulness awareness practices, energy, body work, whatever the nurse brings to the moment that she or he feels might be appropriate for really advancing the awareness and the change that is needed in the coaching model. And we look at antecedents, triggers, and mediators, and we'll go more into this. Where did the symptoms first begin? What happened perhaps very early in life? And what were the triggers all the way up to this moment that brings that person for coaching or to their practitioner? And identifying the strengths that an individual has in their story. We look at the cultural, biochemical, physical, mental, emotional, social, psychological, environmental, spiritual, and genetic dimensions of health, all impacting energy. And as I'll show in this presentation, all of those areas are deeply embedded in the foods we choose, the flavors we seek, the choices that we make. So we support biochemical individuality, what works for one person, that ideal food plan, that elimination plan may not be for everyone. One person may be a vegan, another might need to eat clean animal-based products. We look at hormonal balance and metabolic issues. We think about the interconnectedness with the environment, as I mentioned, the immune system and how it functions based on what we're nurturing and bathing our body with in the terms of the foods we eat. We look at how foods can trigger inflammatory responses. There's a lot of research just looking at rheumatoid arthritis and foods like high fatty fried foods that might be triggers. We think about the ideal GI function and digestion of nutrients, assimilation, and uptake of those nutrients to where they need to go in the individual. And we all have individual genetic predispositions. Some people need more of one nutrient than another. We look at detoxification and what we call biotransformation, how we get rid of things and neutralize chemicals that we take in or that are made endogenously. And we also need to look at how we transform nutrients to go to where they need to optimize cell function. And we look at how our cells have integrity. So we think about the interconnectedness of the mind, body, spirit dimensions and how that influences our physiology. We think about the patient-centered care that honors each person's unique history. And we think about the biochemical individuality, as I mentioned, with the variations in both metabolic function. We know that there are people that could eat a lot and they never gain weight, and there are people that don't eat very much and they always gain weight. Or the person who could have a cup of coffee and have a good night's sleep, and another person a cup of coffee in the morning and they can't go to sleep at night. So we're looking at those genetic vulnerabilities and individual characteristics and how we use that as a strength, because what we know allows us to guide the choices that we make that are unique to each one of us. And we, again, go back to energy field principles and dynamics, understanding that stress, toxic environments, nutrient-deficient diets, all can interrupt our energy field and impair optimal function, and that can contribute to disease. And we look at health on a wellness continuum. We view health as a dynamic balance on multiple levels. And we know that there are days we sleep better and we have more energy and our mood is uplifted. And there are days that we eat ideally and we can go through the day with full energy. And then we go out to a restaurant and we eat foods that are not usual to us. We stay up late, and the next day something shifts in our energy. So becoming aware of that is a big part of, as coaches, how we bring that to the attention of the people we're working with so that they can make the choice and decide if there's change that they want to make. And how do we optimize our internal and external healing environments? Because we are the microcosm of the macrocosm. And the environment, we have several sessions on that you can view, and that's a really important piece to dovetail with the nutritional component. So we talked about energy, many factors that can influence our energy field, from emotions to nutrition, whether deficiency or excess, genetics, medications, viruses, and other organisms. And what we want to do in our coaching model through our lens is support everybody's individuality biochemically, their energy and production, their hormones, their connectedness to their environment, their immune system function, inflammatory responses, which we'll talk a little bit about. Many things can trigger inflammation, their digestive function, their ability to detoxify, as we've said. And some of the areas that we know are modifiable when we talk about chronic disease and the amount of time, energy, and cost to individuals globally: metabolic syndrome, diabetes, heart disease, obesity, learning disabilities, depression and mood disorders, immune dysregulation, both autoimmune and immune dysregulation, including cancers, neurological issues from Alzheimer's to Parkinson's to MS, for example, and endocrine imbalances, the thyroid, the adrenal, infertility. These are all modifiable, and the influences of diet and environment seem to be the two triggers that are most impacting our health and well-being. So our intention is to stay healthy through the life cycle. And here again, we are looking specifically at the nutritional balance and what happens when we are out of balance. So we are energy fields. We're an open system, and we interact electrically within ourselves and the environment on multiple levels every millisecond. And our cell membrane is the prime site of that interaction. We need nutrients. We need a sheath of essential fatty acids that allow impulses to be conducted and to cross through the wall and cell membrane. So these cell membranes are electrically charged, and it's how we communicate with them and how energy in the ATP cycle happens. So having gone through that, it's all about balance. We sometimes eat one way and sometimes the other. Our sleep may be disturbed for uh, multiple reasons. And then we come back to balance and we get a good night's rest and we find the ways to do that. Sleep will affect the food choices we make, affect our energetics. People that don't sleep well tend to want to eat more sugar and drink more caffeine in order to keep their energy up. So it's very basic that sleep disturbances impact our food choices. And we look at the multitude of symptoms and conditions that people might come to us with that they're experiencing. And one of the tenets of coaching is resilience. The good news is we are incredibly resilient beings, and we can come back from many problems, whether it be pain or elevated cholesterol or obesity. Motivation and coaching for change is really the key in order for that to happen. And as nurses and nurse coaches, we also need new ways of being with ourselves so we can really energetically connect with the other. Our own presence is really important for our health and well-being and for working with another, that we are in the moment. So take a moment as you're watching this, and are you listening? Are you taking in this information? Are you in the moment? If you're distracted, come back to center. Find those moments that you could be fully present with yourself, for yourself. And it's the same question that we ask our clients and patients. We ask if they are fully present, if they are mindful, and what is it that we can partner with them to create practices and awareness practices so that they can have that same sense of presence to really be able to take a deeper look at what it is that they need to move toward their health goals and their well-being. So when we think about integrative nurse coaching, we also partner with the Institute for Functional Medicine at the International Nurse Coach Association. And we ask that you embrace this to think about something beyond the medical paradigm we've all worked in. And that's that disease doesn't really exist. What I was describing was many of the areas that impact us and manifest as symptoms, and systems can break down, and we call that disease. But in a functional medicine and integrative health paradigm, diseases don't exist, but they're downstream symptoms from upstream causes. And you can think of that literally. You're eating fish that is in the water, and you don't know that that fish is loaded with mercury and PCBs. One of the large fish like tuna, let's use that, or bluefish. And suddenly you start to have brain fog, headaches, tingling in your feet, neurological symptoms, and you love this fish and you've been eating it for several weeks before the onset of those symptoms. And just perhaps you have some mercury toxicity. And that could be causing you to have these symptoms. You go to the neurologist, you try to find out what's going on. Maybe you're given some medication. Has anyone asked, tell me about what you've eaten? Could there be anything in your environment that might be triggering some of your symptoms? Another example would be, I'm speaking to you from South Florida, where they are aerial spraying potent toxic pesticides over many communities as we speak because of the Zika virus. It may be killing the larva, but it may also be taken in by people and children through the skin, through respiratory, breathing it in, and there are neurological symptoms from headaches to dizziness and other symptoms. So this is where we in healthcare need to start shifting the way we think about disease and how we have to look at the external factors that might be impacting our internal well-being. So again, living in the modern world, we also could be nutritionally depleted. We all know about our modern food supply, that it's devoid of many nutrients through the way that foods are grown and also prepared and processed. And we also know that we live in environmentally challenged times. So the question is, what can we modify in our daily lives? And when we look at modern chronic diseases, we're looking at the lifestyle habits, which is the foundation of integrative nurse coaching. We're looking at the genetic predisposition. We're looking at the environmental load, the dietary nutritional influences, and then the epigenetic effect, how our genes express themselves. And how we get to this through an integrative health and wellness perspective is a tool that we have through our program that's being used in multiple sites and it's validated and being researched and analyzed. And we look at all aspects of health responsibility, life balance and satisfaction, relationships, physical exercise, the nutrition and weight is part of that, emotional and mental components of our well-being, and none of them are separate because they're all colors that blend together in this pie. And if we, again, have poor nutrition and we're not in a healthy environment, it's harder to feel well emotionally and mentally and spiritually. It's more challenging to be in relationships. It's harder to find our true purpose and meaning. So we really need to look at the whole piece of this when we're working with our individual clients and communities. Where we're going to go today is looking at eco-nutrition, as I call it, the impact of the nutrients we take in on our internal environment and how we support our health and well-being. We are going to hold this area that's emerging, nutrigenomics, of looking at how the bioactive food components, including the chemicals in our foods, the phytonutrients, the positive ones, and the chemicals in our foods that have been put into the food that are not natural to the food supply, and how these chemicals communicate with our genetic information within the cell and how the change happens. Children today, we all know the obesity epidemic, the foods that they're being fed, the foods that mom was fed in utero, and having newborns that are bigger and at 6 months actually obese is not unknown anymore. So our genes haven't changed, but our environment has.